So here we have a Range Rover L405. That's the model that was built between 2012 and 2021, and it is displaying catastrophic fault symptoms. The errors on the dashboard are cycling between ABS fault. I've also seen gearbox fault, park brake fault, EBB fault, and many others. In fact, in this case, it also had some difficulty in opening the tailgate. Now, these failures occurred overnight. They weren't as a result of any impact or anything taking place in the road. We simply parked up in the evening, and on the morning afterwards, these failures were showing. They in fact turned out to be the corrosion of an earth point for the ABS system. I'm going to work through the diagnosis of that and of course the repair of that in this video, which I hope will be of some assistance to you if you are suffering the same symptoms with your Range Rover. So the next step in diagnosis is to use a scanner to find out what the faults are. Here I'm able to use a scanner which looks at many of the modules in the car. You may have one which can access at least the transmission and the braking system. Depending on that, you'll be able to drill deeper into these and find out precisely what the faults are. When I drilled into some of the faults from the units, every single fault appeared to be because the data from the ABS module wasn't arriving, and indeed when I went to interrogate the ABS module itself, the braking module of course, I found out that it simply wasn't there. Well, there are of course a number of possible causes behind the absence of the ABS. It may have fallen off the car, that's unlikely. Most expensively is the possibility the ABS module has failed. More likely, frankly, is that the ABS module is not connected effectively, and particularly it may not be receiving effective 12-volt power or may not be grounded. Now, what I'm going to do is diagnose these in order. Obviously, the easiest thing to do is to check that it's receiving effective power. We should know that the L405 Range Rover is very sensitive to having the correct voltage for its electrical equipment. Therefore, the battery needs to be fully charged. So that's the first and easiest thing to check. We'll then check that the connection in general is there, the actual connector to the ABS unit is physically there and connected properly, and just make sure that's clean. That's the second most simplest thing to do. And then thirdly, I'll check the third most simple thing to do, which in fact turned out to be the issue, is the ABS ground. Thankfully, that meant that I didn't need to go for the most difficult thing, which would be to change the ABS module itself. So it seems to be good practice with all Range Rovers, especially the L405, to make sure that the battery is in good condition if there's any sort of electronic fault. Not simple to get access in the L405. Lift out the spare tyre, you might need somebody to help you do that. Then you need some 12 bolts taken out to lift the compressor tank for the air suspension out of the way and get access to the battery. I'm going to actually disconnect the battery completely from the car so I can use a battery tester. You don't need to do this. You could use a multimeter, or you could simply just make sure it's a decent battery, maybe got the little green symbol on the top of it, and make sure above all it's fully charged. In this case, the battery is good. That's not the cause of the fault. Well, now we've established the battery is okay, we're going to move on to the second level of diagnosis, which is significantly more difficult, which is why I've looked at the battery first. We need to jack up the car, which needs, of course, getting that locked wheel nut off. Many people can't find that wheel nut thing in the boot there. Obviously, chock the car and make sure that you loosen the nuts before you raise it and lift the wheel. In my case, I've got these deployable side steps, as you can see at the left there, and it's perfectly safe as long as they're the original Range Rover deployable side steps. The jacking point is actually at the base of the hinge of these. You can jack up at that point, and then you can place an axle stand underneath the very clear axle stand position. It's not simple, you need a good jack. You could of course use the jack that comes with the L405 if necessary, but do use firm axle stands. This is the off side of the car in the UK, the driver's side. The right hand side of the vehicle as you're sitting in the seat, the starboard side if you're a man of the sea or a woman of the sea. In any case, jack it up, get that wheel off in order to get closer to the ABS unit and its connection. Now, in order to get access to the ABS unit and connector and its earthing point, we're going to remove the fender splash shield, as it's called in the manual, if you have access to that. There's 4 screws we're going to remove and some other trim items. Hopefully you can understand from the video here, there's two in the bottom of the car. I'm trying to show you access here. They need to be removed. There's actually several there, but the only two that need to be removed are the ones I'm indicating now. If you take these out, they're Phillips screws, if I remember correctly. You can pull that out of the bottom. And then there's two up the side of that same plastic. This is all within the driver's side, the right-hand side of the vehicle. Now there's some trim clips that need to be removed as well. I use a very thin plastic trim remover to first of all leave these heads out, and then a larger, thicker one to pop out these, were plastic rivets effectively. There's several of them round about, you'll find them. Now you can then lever off the connection for the ABS unit. It's pretty obvious, you can see it there. It's one of these lever connectors. Don't be frightened, you lever off the side and open it up. I'm putting on the electrical connector and then using some spray, you can just blow it off. Just make sure that connector's as clean as possible. Now in this case, following these actions, or first of all ensuring the battery was good and also checking the connector, these are the two easiest things to do. We still had a problem. And so I moved on to the next one, which is the ABS earth. Now you can see that in the vehicle here. All of these units, of course, require a good connection to the chassis in order to return to the battery. In this case, when I touched the unit, you can see there the earthing. It fell away and required, therefore, repair. Now, you may be able to find some other way of getting these four wires you can see there to a good solid earth. It's up to you. You might want to splice the wires, connect them any way that you can to ensure that they get to the negative side of the battery. I chose to take the advice of several folks in various internet forums and install a riv nut in the chassis, so I drilled an 11mm hole and wire brush round about it to give a good connection. This allows me to insert an M8 riv nut into the hole, which provides effectively a captive nut. And I used an M8 A4 stainless steel bolt, so that's something which can cope with marine levels of corrosion, and fitted that into the riv nut hole, and that allowed me to then bolt up all four of the earth connections very firmly into the chassis. Then of course spray it over with some sort of rust protector, and I've got a full, very solid and very reliable earth. Once again, time to test the system, and in this case when I start it, hallelujah.